Peace and respect to you all. Welcome to Demolished Doctrine, the beginning of the end of all the religions. Tonight, a guest I've been wanting to talk to this guy, just him and I with no interruptions, which means I'm not taking anyone from the studio audience at any time. I'm going to be very, very selfish. A man who has earned my respect because he has obviously, no kidding, studied this stuff, BenAbraham.
Hello.
That means it's time for you to talk.
Okay, that's the meaning of it. So yes, the reason why I wanted to have a conversation with you, Richard, I know that we wanted to have a conversation for a long time,
Yeah.
but this time and specifically, and I could explain the reason why, but
Go ahead.
I wanted to have somehow in reality. You see, we always want to explain our own perspectives and points of view, but in reality, I wanted to really understand yours
Okay.
because you see, when you come on Ace's channel or elsewhere, people like to argue,
Mm-hmm.
and the problem with arguments is that we don't really pay attention to what the other has to say because we want to argue and intervene and interrupt and counter. I don't know, give a counter argument and I don't know what.
Yeah.
But I don't know if we are always like willing to really pay attention to what the other person has to say.
Yeah. It's a pro. I mean, I try to control myself, but
Why?
I'm not perfect at it either.
Yeah, but why do you want to control yourself?
To give the person the other chance to explain fully what exactly it is I'm trying to get better at asking clarifying questions instead of
Oh
just
yeah,
giving
maybe.
counterpoints. It's hard.
Oh yeah, maybe you. But I was talking in general with we. You see, not
Yes.
only you. We want to be right, and we want to expose our points of view and be listened to by other people. But it's not
Yeah.
only about you. I include my own self. It's we should also uh, have some room not to debate, but to have a real conversation.
Which I'm very happy to have actually.
You see, I think you said the never-ending conversation. I like it. That's it. So
Well,
I will not debate with you.
since I believe there's always an earth in progress
Okay,
and that angels are conducting end times on a rotational basis,
great.
and that they actually spend, I don't know, a good bit of their time
Okay.
doing that,
Hmm.
that this conversation literally never ends. The conversation about what should we believe about ancient religions, that conversation.
And if I can be paradoxical, I hope you understand my English.
I think your English is fine. It's better than most people I get to talk to.
But if I can be paradoxical, I would say that that never-ending conversation has a beginning and an end.
Well, it seems to have had a beginning. I'm
Mhm.
not certain it ever is going to end. I
Yeah.
don't see any reason why there would be a justifiable cause to stop doing something that is very good, namely making an earth and putting the children of God on it.
Oh yeah, I see that. By end, what do I mean by end anyway?
Yeah,
My first definition of end would be finality. Okay, the finality of all of it. And now end as a sense of like stop. No, you could not have such a concept. You see, I remember the teacher who said you cannot have a concept of infinity. Okay.
Mm-hmm.
And I told him, you know what? You cannot have a concept of a finite, the finitude. You cannot. It's easier to have a concept of infinity than a concept of finite. I don't know how you say that in English. Finiteness. Okay, try to really have a clear concept of finiteness. Okay, try. Okay, and what will be your reaction?
My first thought about that is, what's the width of zero?
That's another way to see it. Huh?
Yeah, like how could you get down to the absolute width of zero? I don't know how that could be
Well,
done mathematically.
even a child, you ask a child 6 years old, you ask a child, okay, try to conceptualize finiteness. Okay, the child will say, yeah, but what's next? Like, what will happen beyond the finiteness? You see, the child will see it as a door. Okay, so but the door suggests that there is something beyond the door. Yeah, so
So
it's
where to begin?
where to begin. So I would say that you can begin and end, but these are to mark seasons within the never-ending conversation.
I mean, this is my time now on this earth,
Okay.
and I'm happy to have it. I'm happy to hold a woman. I'm happy to see a baby born. I'm happy to bury a loved one. I'm happy to
Well,
be in pain. I'm happy for all of that. It's amazing, and the extreme contrasts that make the things that I like truly beautiful.
you just said something in, intrigue, intriguing. How do you pronounce that in English? Intriguing.
You said it properly, as far as I know.
You said, "I'm happy to suffer, to have pain." I would like you.
Absolutely.
I would like you to elaborate on that.
There was a point in my life where I was very, very selfish, and I'd never experienced any real pain that I could remember. I was probably about 4 years old,
Mhm.
and I fell onto a sharp rock, and it cut me on my leg. And it
Literally.
seemed to me the most horrible thing that could ever happen.
Mm.
And it's odd. As I grew up, I found out not only did I see others in pain, but I found out the pain that I had experienced was actually very, very small pain. And
And that was at what age? At,
I suppose it started when I was about 4.
okay.
Um, so I noticed that other people had pain too. You
Hmm.
know, I saw someone else get injured, and I noticed it because I noticed my own. And I try to understand how much pain they're in compared to the pain I had experienced. I mean, these are the beginning thoughts that lead to empathy. So at least that's how my experience was of it. Um, I think I was. I think it was that same year, and maybe for that same cause, that I realized I couldn't make my bed, but every time I got into my bed was made. And I realized that the larger people in the household were the ones doing it. I surmised, and I tried for a year to fall asleep without disheveling the bed. Um, Unsuccessfully. Woke up disappointed for a year every
Yes,
day.
I see your point.
So in my pain, I'm learning empathy and understanding of others. In my frustrations, but in my joys as well.
And that's the beginning of our conversation, you remember? Listening to the others.
Yes.
Do you just
Why? Could I
do you
ask you a quick question?
yeah do you, one last do you make a kind of distinction between pain and suffering?
Uh, Pain is the physical subset of suffering
Okay, so can you
to
have
me.
like a pain without suffering?
Could you have pain without suffering? I don't think you could have pain without suffering, but I think you could have suffering without any physical pain.
Oh, okay, yeah, it would go the other way also.
Could be emotional, mental.
Basic pain.
Hmm.
And what was your questions? What was your question?
Um, I would love to know from you why you take these ancient stories so seriously, because it's evident to me that you do. I'd love to know why.
You would have to tell me to what ancient stories you're referring.
The Bible, for instance, Tanakh, for instance.
You know what? When we talk about translations, okay, you probably heard that many times in your life. Perhaps you said that same thing yourself. You see, we say, oh, the original text is cannot really be translated, and we should return, you see, to the real thing. We often hear that, and we say that, but we don't always do it. Really. And I had the not the wisdom because I have absolutely no wisdom in myself, but so I did not have the wisdom, but I had the grace or the opportunity or the golden opportunity to learn that in many occasions actually. When I was 19, when I was 20 something, when I was 30 something, when I was 40 something. So I had many opportunities, you see, uh, within schools and outside of schools to learn Hebrew and some Greek and other languages. And English is one of them, by the way. And if we can focus on the Tanakh, the Hebrew, it's not a joke when we see the original cannot be replaced. Okay. Um, the translation, even the best one, any translation, even the best one, is a loss, a total loss. The Italian proverb. I'm not that good in Italian, but traditore, traditore. I have to learn Italian. It means translating is betraying. You can Google traduttore, traditore, but they have that way to speak Italian. But especially with Hebrew, you see, like if you take the Greek text, the Greek language is a very intellectual language. So when you translate it, I mean, you can be confident that what you are translating is quite faithful. But Hebrew is another thing. Hebrew is a living being. Do you think I can translate your being? I'm serious.
I would think not.
No, 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 not at all. Not even one sentence, if you see my point. Do you think I can, even with the best science, and I have great respect with science? Actually, this week my daughter received her PhD. So I'm not against science. She is now a physicist, PhD. My little frog was a little baby, and now she became a lady, and now she's a physicist. It's crazy shit. She was just a little frog. And Hebrew is a living being. it's as complex as nature. So do you think that science can like figure out nature like once and for all? No. Like any scientist will tell you that nature transcends science, not in the religious sense, but in the scientific sense. Nature is always like ahead of your science,
Hmm.
and it's and we should rejoice because you are invited to discover the depth of nature, which is probably the depth of the corporality of God Himself. If you agree with that, I hope. But now, I would debate with anybody that Hebrew is as complex as nature. Not complex in the sense that complicated, that in the sense that you will not understand. No, no, no. Science, sorry, nature is not complicated. We are complicated. Science actually, nature is simple and at the same time infinitely complex. And you can understand it, but it will last forever. I hope. Because let me repeat that for me, nature is the corporality of God Himself. Now, learning Hebrew is not a small thing. It's not just a you learn it and you just boast and I know Hebrew and blah blah. You visit other websites and you just I never did that. Not for Hebrew. You go on other websites and you blast the other people because they know less than you because you know something. You see. But no, no, no. Hebrew saved my life many times, literally. Literally, you know what it's you know what is pain. So, like psychological pain, huh? It
Hmm.
happens often. It's a taboo, but in reality, we often suffer psychologically. So you see, I sit in front of my laptop, and suddenly everything sucks, and I suffer, and I tell myself that it has been it has been too long. You see, it began when I was 17. Now I'm 52, and you see, like Job, you would like in chapter 3, huh, to say, "Fuck that shit." I curse the day of my birth and the night in which I have been conceived. And now you open the text. You see, you quote Job. So you see, look at the Hebrew text now, and I rediscover every time, every day. I rediscover the absolute beauty and depth, and I don't know in English sacredness of the language, which is called by the Hebrew that the Jews, my one of my teachers, Jews, used to call it a holy language.
I actually believe that it is.
And you know what? If I feel depressed or I open the text of Genesis 1, which is in reality a very boring text if we are honest. Like in the translation, it's so fucking boring, so infinitely boring. Think about that. In the beginning, God is so boring, and in French, believe me, it's not better. I mean, I don't want to hurt people who believe. You see, I mean, if it's about your faith, I will not touch that. Okay, I cannot touch another person's faith. We are talking about language. Now, if you open the text in Hebrew, it's another story. It cannot be boring. Can you? If you cannot be bored in a forest, in an unknown infinite forest, With real life, you will never be bored. In the beginning, God. No, 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 no. First letter is an abyss. Let me repeat that. The very first letter of what we call the Torah, grammatically, it's a preposition, but it's an abyss. So now, what's about the second letter? By the way, if you pronounce, I did not. This is not premeditated, but I just said first and second. If you take the first letter and the second letter and you exclude them from the Bible and you pronounce them together, you will have bar, which means at least two things: the grain of wheat and the Son, S-O-N. The Son of God is right there in the first two letters, bar. So you see, it's infinitely deep. And you continue like that, letter upon letter, word upon word, sentence upon sentence, numerical value upon numerical value. And I'm referring to the old traditional system, not the Kabbalistic lore that I have studied.
I have not.
And that I respect, but I think it should be studied within the context of Judaism. If not, it becomes like New Age crap. It's like recycled by New Age spirituality. But the traditional numerical value system is very serious. It can be found in the Bible itself. Actually, I could show it. So, what was your question? Why Hebrew? What was the question?
Why have you learned what you have?
About Hebrew, you mean?
Hmm.
Because it saved my life.
But you
That's
didn't know that going into it.
because when I feel like total crap, and I do, I open the Torah, I read it out loud, and I forget myself. And I enter the forest of discoveries. And the little child in me and in you and in anybody is super grateful. When you bring that child into that forest, the old suffering man disappears
Mm-hmm.
and the child rejoices. And even if it's just for 1 or 2 hours, it's a on this planet in this valley of tears, we say in Latin. It's like receiving like a hot chocolate in hell. Let's say you are burning in hell, and I give you a kind of drink. You would enjoy it. So it's like Jesus on the cross. He will receive a few drinks, but I think it was not the drinks we would like to have generally. But he had, I think, some, if I remember, water and maybe vinegar. I don't know. But that vinegar
So they
is a
say.
yeah, that vinegar is a paradise when you are on crucified. Huh?
Yeah, I imagine it would be.
So my answer is Hebrew saved my life literally. Like I mean, it has become a real living friend. Yeah. So
I
no
wish
doubt.
I had a story as romantic as yours.
What do you mean?
Your story is beautiful. Mine is not.
Okay, so tell me your story, and I will judge the beauty thereof. I'm sure it is beautiful.
Mm. Well, I'll let you be the judge. Um, I was concerned with a very small tribe, just my closest friends, my
Okay.
family.
Mhm.
and really had no respect for anyone else, and would do anything, would steal, would lie, whatever was necessary to benefit my tribe and myself, mostly myself.
Sorry, what do you mean by tribe?
My very small knit group of family and friends, just my
Okay,
direct tribe.
okay.
Yeah, and I didn't care how bad whatever I did would hurt some other tribe, or singular person. I really had no concern about that whatsoever. Um, and I was a very bitter and angry person, and I had a dream happen to me that I didn't want. And before anyone asks, I've never done hallucinogenic drugs. I never was that brave. I never would have done that, and still have
Uh,
not.
oh no.
But I've known people that were that brave, but I'm not one of them. Um, and I was shown an interpretation for the text. Now, that gets really interesting because not only was the interpretation concerning things like definitions of Hebrew words, idioms of the Hebrew culture at that time,
Hmm.
um,
Even from
how.
even coming from scholars, huh? Yeah, yeah,
Oh yeah, yeah. I
yeah,
find no flaws in it. Yeah,
yeah.
and that it revealed to me um, the way that the Hebrew people spoke of astrology
Okay.
and astronomy, and it also showed me um, things that are true in science that I was unaware of. I was just completely ignorant of, even though lots of other people on this earth knew about it. I did not, and also simultaneously gave me a reading frame that I've yet to see fail. And
Reading
fail,
from, okay.
by fail, what would I call a failure? If I were reading within the context that I'd been given in that movie, in that dream, and I stumble across a word which Strong's exhaustive and Jusinius, they did not know the meaning of the Jewish word, the Hebrew word. Um, but they have the literal letters in Hebrew there, and
Yes.
I can't read Hebrew, and I don't understand the Hebrew language like that. I can't read it. I can't pronounce it. Nothing like that. I have no idea what the letters mean actually. But I look at that word and I say, if this context is correct, that word has to mean this definition. And then I've done it several times. I kind of quit doing it after several occasions of this. I copy it, I paste it into Google, and I hit translate. And there's never been occasion where the necessary context that indicates the meaning of that word was wrong. It has always been what that word meant. So
Just a moment.
I'll know a
According,
word I
so
can't read
yeah,
from a
yeah,
language I can't speak without looking it up.
yeah. But if it's a living being, you can expect that,
That's
really.
what
But you know what? What you are saying is this exclusively within the context of dreams, or it's also outside the context of dreams, where you have also some, I don't know. Just a moment, I will look in my brain for a word you have in English. Daydream.
Well, I was awake when it happened, so it might be better labeled as a daydream. Um, but it revealed things outside of my knowledge range, outside of my experience. Um, Things that had been discovered by science since I got out of school. You and I being about the same age.
Mhm.
Um,
We are
yeah,
52, both of us. I think.
I'm 56, but we're both in the same neighborhood. I mean, you've been out of school for 30 years. They discovered things during those 30 years, and you could be unaware of what they discovered just
Of
because you're
course,
not interested or you've been too busy. And that
of
was the
course.
case with me. I was busy supporting a wife and her two kids, and I was just working. I didn't have time to look into recent science and stuff. But the daydream showed me science recently discovered since I got out of school. And I know I wasn't studying those things. I know I didn't just happen across them. Um, so I can't have put them myself into a dream. And as soon as I look at information theory, when there's information from outside of myself that's falsifiable in reality and turns out to be true, that is, it's knowledge. Well, we don't invent knowledge, we discover knowledge. So that means necessarily someone else's idea was in my head, which I'm willing to accept
Oh yes,
because I
yes, we
have
have
to.
to. Oh yeah, we have to accept that we have no, we possess nothing.
So I began this study because of that.
Hmm.
And the eventuality has been that I understand that you and Nunya Biz and Halcyonic Kaiju and Let's Otvo and Harpo Blues, all of you become angels.
Okay.
And that has changed how I feel about you and how much I should respect you and how I should treat you.
I have many questions. Should you treat everybody like that?
Everyone here, yes.
Everybody, everyone. I mean, in the entire like universe, all living beings.
No,
No.
no, I should disrespect the demons.
Okay, I could concede that. That's okay.
Now, there could be a lot of life forms out there that I'm just unaware of. And I would like to think that should I ever meet one, I would treat them neutrally and with respect, but not because I believe they become an angel, but just because they're an intelligent being, until they teach me otherwise.
I mean, the two worst girlfriends I had when I was young. Okay, the one
Mm.
was the most brilliant, and the other one was the most beautiful. And yes, we have to be cautious. Now, I really like your story. I have many questions actually about dreams and all that. And I know one Greek ancient writer before Christ. I think it was before Christ. I would have to double check. But that guy wrote a very good book on dreaming.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, this is in ancient, in antiquity. It was before the Middle Ages. And
Okay.
I think he had a great understanding of dreaming. I have another question for you now.
Sure.
Do you agree that nature is like beyond human science? Like nature is always deeper than human science, and it's always possible to discover something new in nature. I hope. Do you agree with that?
Yes, in the literal understanding of what the word discover means,
Yeah,
it
yeah.
means to uncover a thing.
Uh, the same.
And
It's yeah.
and the Bible speaks briefly of this and understanding of God, but it applies to nature as well, in my opinion. That it's you could say it's nature's pleasure to hide a thing, and the pleasure of kings to uncover them.
Wow. Hallelujah. So now, when we it's not an analogy. It's a real conversation about nature. Now, it's not even an analogy, but when you apply that to the scriptures, okay? not even as an analogy, but as a real correlation. Okay, it's a real application. Okay, so
Mm-hmm.
maybe we could call that a living application. Do you, would you agree with the following thing? A translated version of the Hebrew original, no matter what translation, no matter what language. People freak out about the King James. Yeah, but they don't even talk about. Do they know the best French translation? Italian, Russian? They don't even know these things.
Yeah.
They don't even know the best Chinese translation. And actually, it would be great to look at it because it's full of surprises, actually.
Hmm.
Okay? Great surprises, actually. And Chinese, yeah. And, but the Hebrew will not change. Now, would you agree that if you take any translation, let's say the King James, anything, or the Vulgate in Latin, you take the translation, okay, would you agree with me that you could reach a kind of limit with that text if you compare with the Hebrew, where you will never reach any limit in the depths of the text?
I have found what you said to be true. And from my experience and from no scholar, no theologian,
No, no.
that the more I pray about what the text is saying, the deeper it becomes. Where in observation, at least, I see Christians spending at least the last 150 years having precisely the same arguments run out of somewhere to go.
Mm-hmm.
So,
Yeah, yeah.
yes, I very much agree with your assessment.
So if it's a question of faith, you cannot like judge someone who cannot like read Hebrew, of course, because that person like God is responsible for his creation. So you can be sure that that person with his or her own understanding, the English or the Latin or the French text will like the spirit is not like is not stupid. Okay, the spirit is able to intervene in someone's life. Like it's a joke. Sometimes I like that joke. Like if you want to, if you don't learn Hebrew, you will not inherit the kingdom of heaven. Because I mean, how could you be saved if you don't know Hebrew? But of course, it's a joke because
Well, there's always grace.
there's always grace, always spirit, which is intelligence.
Yes.
And it's not because you know Hebrew that you are intelligent. It's not enough. My point is that the, all human translations are human projects
Mm-hmm.
and they are finite. And of course, the spirit is strong enough. The big boy, huh? Maybe a big girl, because we could talk about that.
Sophia, you could say.
Mm-hmm. Or chokhmah in Hebrew is also feminine.
Didn't know that.
And so if it's about someone's faith, we cannot judge that because the text, I mean, the spirit is deeper than everything, than a translation. But the Hebrew text is empirically infinite. If you don't like the word infinite, I would say uh, almost infinite.
How about the repercussions of what it's trying to say are without end? It's not the words themselves, it's not the letters themselves, it's the meanings behind all of that. It doesn't seem to end.
But I mean, it's crazy. But how could it
That's
be
what I
otherwise?
think is true. I mean, I try to
Yeah,
talk to
but I was
people
about
about
to say,
this,
how could
but
it be otherwise? It's crazy,
there,
but how could it be otherwise?
I try to talk to people about the conversation we're having right now, and it seems they're not receptive to the idea
Of
that the depth of this, that they're only seeing a very, very, very shallow view of this, and I don't even know how to put their view into a percentage.
no, no, no.
It seems to me so small, almost to be not very meaningful.
And maybe it's not quantitative at all. And maybe it's a
Maybe
question
I
of,
can't. Yeah,
maybe it's a quality, not a quantity. And it would be a tragedy to discover that in some, I would not say person, I don't like to judge people, but in some, I don't know, contexts, okay, the quality in question is totally absent. So how could you quantify what is not quantitative?
maybe we shouldn't try. But it's like the discoveries of science. Our science isn't complete, and I still have probably an unknowable number of questions left that I want answered in prayer. But there's the more I discover, the more questions it uncovers as well, and it never seems to stop. And I can do that on a very, very, very small topic that's covered within these stories. Um, and there doesn't seem to be an end to the learning of it, and that alone impresses me. Where I think it's irrational to believe that something about Bronze Age poets wrote this.
Yeah, yeah, it's hard to believe, but I mean, in 2024, we are extremely stupid in many respects.
Hmm.
No, I mean, I was talking about that with my son before I had this conversation, and I told him like pure intellectuality is extremely rare. Yet, where I live, at least, like more and more young people, they go to university. When I was young, it was quite rare actually to go to university. It was exceptional. Huh? But nowadays, like both my kids are they are students, and so I'm not against that. Of course, I'm absolutely pro education, but pure intellectuality in the Greek sense. It's pure contemplation of the eternal truths and beauties. Um, it's rare. It's rare. It's almost absent from our society.
Mm-hmm.
Pure intellectuality. And the conversation, I hope we are having somehow, at least I hope, is partially, purely intellectual in that sense.
I mean, I have a lot of emotion about these things
Of course.
because what it's done for me,
Of course.
very selfishly. But I also believe that it can do those same things for other people, which is why I bother to talk about it in hopes that they would have those same benefits in their lives. So there's definitely an emotional aspect for me about it. But so far as what I believe it's trying to um, express, what it's trying to put forward, I don't think that it's an emotional thing that what I feel has no influence on it. That my opinions of it don't matter. My opinions of it wouldn't matter if I were an atheist or if I was the most religious zealot on the planet.
Uh,
How I feel about it doesn't change it.
that's interesting. And I never said I would deny or negate emotions,
Right.
but pure intellectuality is rare, whereas emotions are not.
Of course.
But who knows what you call emotion? I'm not in your place to know what you really mean.
Right.
Maybe maybe Jesus was serious when he said, "Don't judge the others, oh you stupid." Because you know what? On the when Jesus was crucified, he said that there is an equation in very deep philosophy. I mean, I'm quite sure Logos was a great philosopher, don't you think? And when the equation is sin equals ignorance, and ignorance equals sin, and you have to forgive them because they don't know what they do. What do you think about that? They don't know what they do.
Well, personally,
And I
I
think I know
know.
what I do, but maybe I don't.
Well, I at least know where I was compared to where I am now.
That's great.
I experienced both of those two things, and I was I was really immoral about my atheism. I would argue with anyone,
Mhm.
and I mean as a up to 41-year-old man, I had arguments with people as young as 10 years old about whether or not their parents' religion made any sense. Now that's horribly unfair, uh, but I would do that. I seriously would. Um, so I know where I was then in my ignorance. I know that I'm not as ignorant as I was. I know that. Um, so I can compare those two, but that's really all I could say.
But one day I discovered that my ignorance had something in common with the Hebrew language. It's almost infinite. And it has to be discovered, I guess.
Yeah.
But it's beautiful because the discovery of my ignorance is the knowledge of the Lord. If it makes sense what I just said. The discovery of my own ignorance is itself the knowledge of the Lord.
Depends on what the Lord is.
Oh yeah, now you will pick on the words. And what do you mean by Lord? I love that. I almost love you, Richard. Maybe already.
I think
I
I do love you at some level, more than a lot of people I've had the opportunity to meet,
not like you would love a
actually.
demon. Would not love a demon.
I cannot love a demon.
Now, what do you mean by the Lord? Because this is a deep, deep, and quite complex topic, actually.
What I believe the Lord is,
Yeah.
I think I can put pretty succinctly. The Lord, meaning Jesus, the sovereign, um, is a description of a job that, in order to meet the demands of that job, you would have to be personally coached.
Okay,
And
stop. Okay, just a moment. Stop. Do you understand that most people would will not understand what you mean by job?
it's a job. I
Yeah,
mean
but
a
do you
job.
understand that? Yeah, but people don't understand that
But I
generally.
mean a job. It's a simple word.
Yeah, but it's you are using it on a deeper level.
It's a description of things that have to be enacted out.
Yeah.
A job.
Okay. No, I understand you, but I mean,
Mm-hmm.
it's a you are using the word job in a very specific way.
So what happens with the Christ, from what I can understand, is although he's bright, although the people, the adults that he argues with at a very young age, are surprised at how he thinks. Um, even impressed in a positive way about the way that he thinks about things. He is enlightened in his adulthood as to what his life purpose is.
Okay.
And he is then given a choice as to whether or not he would agree to do that set of acts that are specified and being asked of him. And if he would do that series of acts to their completion, which to their completion includes not just talking strongly, not just arguing strongly, not just yelling and screaming, but arguing until the point that he is murdered for saying and doing the things that he has done, which becomes a very big display of trust between him and his teacher.
Okay.
Um,
If I could
which
just say, oh, sorry, if I could just say something, I retract what I said about the job, because I thought you were referring to not something totally different, but I thought you were referring to the job, like somehow before John 1:1, somehow.
hmm,
A kind of, we could talk about that kind of job, a kind of job out of this world somehow. But you are talking about a very specific job that would,
mhm,
if I understand, that would have been given to him like in his real lifetime.
mhm.
Okay.
And it seems an evident change because at the first miracle, his mother says of him to him, the wedding ceremony is out of wine. He says, "Woman, what do I have to do with you? Or why are you asking me this? I can do nothing about it, or it's not yet my time." And then suddenly he does something. So I think what that's trying to say is there's a differentiation in ability, that he's first in one state and then in this other state. And I think that's the reason for that story that being there, that
And we should not
that he
forget
agrees to.
what his mother
Yeah,
said. Huh? Yeah. We should not forget at the same
do
time.
all that he says. That's the
Oh
only thing
yeah.
I can think of that she says afterward.
Man, she
She
was so.
says to the servants or followers or believers, do all that he says. Um, okay, so he agrees. He's informed of a job. He's informed that he's selected to do the job, born, in fact, to do that certain job, and then he has his own free will to agree to do it or not, and he agrees. So then he begins.
And if you, sorry, if he would have refused, if he would have refused.
I don't know. That's not in the story.
Okay, I
I,
accept that.
I can only think that no one ever refused.
Oh, so finally, if you
Um,
tell me free will, if you tell me free will will never refuse, I like that.
well, just a moment.
Yeah.
Um, I refused to do something one time in the face of the Father.
Yes.
I refused to do something one time, something he wanted me to do. And I'll tell you that story right after I'm done defining Christ.
Great. And remind me to talk about Jonah,
Jonah. Okay, I will.
please.
So he accepts the work and he becomes the apt student. He gets hungry for knowledge. And the Father teaches him so that he can do everything that he sees the Father do before him. And he does it.
And he grows
And
in learning and in wisdom.
yes, yeah, having been obviously ignorant before. Um, I could just say the story of Paul. and be done with the description. He spends a time that's blind. He spends a time seeing. He spends a time testifying. He had a time where he was not in agreement whatsoever. So essentially, the story of Paul. So then he ascends into heaven, and after the ascension into heaven and the ascension of the people, they remove the oceans, the planet melts, they recover their 7 mountains of metal, and they go on to the next earth, where that Jesus will, in the next story, have his story written down. He'll be Christ of that story. When he refers to the Father in that story, that will be the one who taught him. And then when that story is given to an earth, the new person who does that job for that earth will read it, realize it's describing their life, agree to the same contract, and call the last Christ the Father, as the previous Christ called that previous Christ the Father. And how far back into time, I don't know.
The contract itself, could it be a synonym of covenant?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes, it is. It is a covenant. It's a covenant between the Father and the Son.
I have a question for you. Who is willing to appreciate, not even believe, but just appreciate, enjoy what you are saying? Who?
All of us, once we're in heaven.
Okay, great. But
For
I mean,
now,
yeah, around you, yeah.
for now, it's a bad joke.
Who is able not to agree with you? I'm not looking for agreement. I'm looking just for enjoyment. Who is able to enjoy what you say?
Actually, I've found Dr. Bowen to enjoy this story.
Doctor Who?
Dr. Joshua Bowen.
Okay.
Also, a man who calls himself different names, but majoritively he's called himself the Raging Atheist.
Yeah, the guy with blonde hair, if I know him.
And about 40 people I've met in real life.
How many?
About 40.
They
I
are
brought
able to enjoy that.
Yes. In fact, they left their religions to have a Christ worshiping life without ritual, based on these conversations.
I'm asking, are you surprised by the fact that I'm asking that question?
No, but I
Okay.
am curious to hear the rest.
Because actually, I'm surprised by the number of people who could enjoy that. You are luckier than I am. I know nobody who. Anyway,
Can I tell you something?
what?
They get sent to me, and then I tell them the story, and then it immensely improves their lives.
Oh yeah, I believe you. That, but
I
my
mean,
question.
I've literally had a man show up, 50 feet from my front door and be milling around trying to figure out what he's doing there. And I was sent out of where I stayed, walked out to him, was told directly to go to that guy.
Yeah, but there is a reason for that. It's because you found a Chinese secret.
I don't think I found any secret.
I'm joking a little, but there is a reason for that. Sorry, seriously. Um, I'm asking the question because probably many intelligent people, okay, who studied in theology, read the Bible, studied Greek, Hebrew, anything, okay? Like, I mean,
Sure.
intelligent people
Mm-hmm.
without or with education. I don't care about superficial education anyway. Um, I mean, Many intelligent people will think that what you are saying is absolutely crazy.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, and can you confirm that?
Oh, yes.
Okay, and in this crazy world, it is often the case. Actually, have you ever visited a New Age session weekend or something with crazy people who are channeling? I don't know, angels, and like you suddenly discover that you are the only normal person on the planet. But anyway, so probably many intelligent people will simply think or actually quickly conclude
Sure.
without really trying to see your point. Conclude that you are maybe nice but crazy.
Mm-hmm. Happens all the time.
And I cannot explain everything in nature, but I will give one cause of that, and you will tell me what you think. Okay? Of course, we could, and for many things, we could give many causes. Now, I will give you one cause. The way you explain it, you you follow it. And by the way, the Chinese secret was not a real joke because the Chinese they understood the cycles of things, and they were. It's the only old civilization, by the way, that is still like really like active, as you can see. They are quite active, huh? In China.
Mm-hmm.
Very old. Actually, it's a primitive civilization that it is still there at the same place, and they have never moved. So they know nature. This is like a very immense country of natives. They are natives. They are primitive, but in the positive sense. They know nature. Now with communism, I don't know what they are losing, but uh, this what I call the secret nature is they know that beyond the door, you see the end, the end. They know that there is something. Of course, there is something beyond the door, and they know it. This is Chinese. So now many Christians don't understand that simple fact of nature. Now, what could sound even more crazy, you will tell me what you think. It's that what you are saying in reality could be substantiated by scripture.
Mm-hmm.
If you can rejoice to hear that.
I can definitely show my case.
But the problem is that the way you express it, the way you explain it, like I mean, when we take away, you take the path of you see when you explain something, you have to make a decision. You take one path instead of another one. So that path, many people may not necessarily understand or appreciate what you are saying, but the fact of what you said, you see, I don't know for 24 Jesus is that's not my point at all. It's not important if I agree with you or not. I
Mm-hmm.
did not come tonight to agree with you or to try
Mm-hmm.
to convince you. This is childish anyway, I believe. But what you say can be some substantiated with other ways. Like I could even give you some weapons. You see, not to count that, not to you see what you call the 24 Jesus and all that. Like this is your thing, and but actually there are many things in Hebrew that could suggest that the beginning, Reshit, is in fact the fruit of a previous harvest.
That's what they claim. That they put seven metals of mountains of metal here. A little
Yeah,
bit more has been collected over time, and they're going to take all of it, even the part they didn't drop off. But it's a recycling of oceans, a recycling of metals, etc.
yeah, and you
Yeah,
can
I
read,
totally see that in the story myself.
and you could read also Job 28 for that.
Oh, and speaking of Job, Jonah, and
Jonah.
speaking of Jonah, the story I promised to tell you
Okay, now what is the story? Because Jonah refused to preach,
until he didn't.
and finally he did preach.
Yes.
Okay, so this is again the story of Paul.
Mm-hmm. That's right.
So somehow, is this not your story?
Mine looks pretty similar, but I imagine there's a lot of people that looks pretty similar.
I expect that to be so,
Yeah.
actually.
I'm not the first atheist to get religion. That's for sure. Um,
Do you consider yourself as an atheist?
I was. Now I understand it's an unjustifiable claim. It's logically impossible to maintain atheism, just for the fact that we don't know everything.
Actually, atheism would be a divine thing. Like for me, to be atheist would be to be God himself because it's so
That's what
hard
you,
to prove the absence of God. You would have to be God to prove it because,
which would make you not atheistic, just self-deistic.
yeah, because God has no God. Huh? So God knows what is atheism. Huh?
Yeah.
God is an atheist. God has absolutely no God. So he's well placed to talk about atheism.
Well, it depends. If he claims himself, then he'd be claiming a god. I'm
But
just saying,
now,
just for argument's
yeah,
sake.
that's fun. It's funny. But now let us return to the harvest, the fruit of the harvest.
Mm-hmm.
Because before the first word of Genesis, if we study the primitive text, there is a strong suggestion in the word, the first word, that something happened before, and that thing was a season.
Interesting.
And during that season, a a learning, painful learning happened.
That's true.
Okay, do you
That would
like
be
that?
true.
And
Because we in our season are having that painful learning.
yeah, and now when the text begins, it's not out of nowhere because there is nothing out of nowhere. Even God is not out of nowhere; He's out of Himself. So the text of the Genesis is not out of nowhere. When you open a novel, it's out of nowhere. I mean, okay, the story begins out of nowhere. But this is not
Mm-hmm.
the way things work in nature. Nothing is out of nowhere. So Bereshit, the text begins. Bereshit. So this is the first letter is the second letter of the alphabet. Where's the first? In the
There
previous
isn't one.
season. Yeah. It indicates the previous season. So now Bereshit could be translated by the first fruit. Literally, I would debate that anytime. In the beginning, it's a decision. It's a human decision to say in the
It
beginning,
was.
and
Yes.
it's not wrong, by the way, huh? Not wrong.
No, it's not wrong.
It's
It's
not
within
wrong.
the range.
It's within the range, but by the first fruit is clear language, absolutely literal translation. Now, the first fruit of what?
Good
Of what?
question.
The first fruit of what harvest? Because the first fruit is always the first fruit of a process of, correct my English, harvesting or something like that.
Harvesting is the correct word.
And now the text begins, and by that first fruit, the mighty ones created the above and the below.
Yeah, the next fruit.
And that beginning or that first fruit, we know what who is. And John is in reality a footnote. John 1:1 is a footnote of Genesis 1:1. Maybe we don't like the concept of footnote, but it's a parallel or a kind of actually
A
maybe Genesis
compliment.
or maybe
How about
Genesis
if I
1,
use the word compliment?
maybe or maybe Genesis 1:1 is a footnote of John. Okay.
Well, it being more expansive, I'll take John as the footnote.
Okay. So in Arche, the logos. Okay, now same text, exactly same exact text. Arche is also a feminine, and it means principle is what is first. It's not necessarily a beginning in the sense that we generally mean. Huh? Beginning, it's always beginning in time. Okay, beginning in time. But do you think that this is only the beginning of time? I mean, it's
It's the
not the
beginning of
beginning.
time here.
Oh yeah, but it's way more than that, in my opinion.
Mm.
It's actually it's the beginning of time, space, being, meaning, love, friendship, joy, peace, life. The list goes on forever. And that's the first fruit of something previous. Do you agree with that?
I do. In fact, it's necessary to what I think the text is saying, that this has happened before, and this is something that heaven does. It's not the first time it happened, and it won't be the last.
When they ask a Christian, when did the creation begin? Christian
Let
said,
me guess. They said day one of creation.
yeah, they said in the beginning, Ben, don't you
In
think?
the beginning.
Yeah. So I said, when? I said, okay, great. When did the beginning happen? I mean, it was from all eternity. Yeah, but
Uh,
so when did
about
this?
10,000 years ago? I'm
Yeah, but
guessing their answers.
yeah, but they will say, yeah, but what happened before? They said, yeah, but it was from all eternity. So okay, so how could you figure out a beginning within eternity? It's crazy thinking. It's just because we need to understand that scriptures are not related to pure abstract infinity and concepts like that. It's living. It's not a calculator, one, two, three, four, ad infinitum. This is dead. This is dead infinity. I had great battles with my daughter about that. The Madame, the doctor, huh? I told her.
Miss
I told her
Dr. Physics.
your infinity is dead. She thinks I'm crazy.
It's a placeholder. I mean, am I misunderstanding what infinity means mathematically? Or in physics? It's a placeholder. It's not a real object.
I like the fact that you don't want to call that an object. But now, Christ is the thing of God. No?
Yeah.
Would you say that?
Yeah.
Not
That
the
the
thing in the
reason
very noble sense, yeah.
I think I can justify everything that was made, and in the beginning, all things through, with, and for Christ Jesus. I think I can justify that, and it makes good sense to me. If there weren't need for us to be separated from heaven, that is, we didn't have to experience suffering, then we wouldn't have to be on an earth. If we didn't have to be on an earth, we'd have no reason to be separated from God. If we didn't have to have reason to be separated from God, we would need no pontiff, no pontificator, no Christ. We
This
would
is
need
where
no bridge
yeah,
back to heaven because we would be in heaven.
this is where it's hard for me, if I can be honest.
Hmm.
It's hard for me to follow you there because you have the presupposition that I have like myself pre-existed, and I would like
Yourself
you.
pre-existed?
Do
No,
you assume that I have pre-existed myself?
no.
My
But then there's been someone who had sometime in the past of Earths a life very similar to yours. And not that Christ gets reincarnated onto different Earths, but Christ ascends, becomes the Father, which it's claimed directly. He will be called Wonderful, Counselor, Emmanuel, God with us. and Christians ignore this, everlasting Father. That Christ becomes the everlasting Father. Now, does that displace the last everlasting Father? Well, no. He's still everlasting. It's
You
just
know
they
what?
sit side by side.
You know why you sound crazy?
Hmm.
Because you are courageous enough to say things that are somehow very similar to many things that I believe, actually,
Hmm.
but that I would not dare to talk about.
Yeah. Well, here's what I think is true, Ben. It doesn't matter what I say until the time that people see that it's true. And then it will matter to them. And what good would it do? Well, if I can propose the idea of 29 moon sized spaceships arriving full of angels, and people look at me and go, well, Richard, that's crazy. And I go, fine, it's crazy. But then when it happens, they already know who it is as soon as they see it.
Mm.
And that amount of comfort to that many people at that moment is worth it to me that they think I'm a fool always.
Actually, to be that kind of fool is a great thing.
You know that, of course, you know, not everyone knows, that that Samson slayed 10,000 with the jawbone of an ass.
Repeat that,
So
please.
I feel like I'm in good company.
But repeat that, please. Before I laugh, I need to understand.
The idiom is um, if a person was thought to be foolish and stupid,
Okay.
they were said to have the jawbone of an ass. So when Samson when he has the jawbone of an ass
Hmm.
that he uses to slay 10,000, what that means is that they thought he was an idiot and found out later he was right. And it permanently changed them. It slayed them. They couldn't believe it. They were amazed.
I will tell you that why, because why I believe that we have at least one very important thing in common regarding the scriptures.
Hmm.
At least one. Of course, we have more than that. It's because when I read the Hebrew text, okay, you see what we just talked about, like Bereshit. So this is by the first fruit, in the first fruit, okay, and we could also translate in the choicest part, okay.
Mm-hmm.
Were you distracted?
No, I'm fine. I'm listening.
Great. So what we said about the first fruit in Genesis 1:1, in the first fruit, in the beginning, in the
Mm-hmm.
choicest part. John will say eventually, in the principle. Arche means principle in very clear Greek.
Yes.
The Greek is quite actually easy to translate. So I don't know why we are obsessed by the beginning, in the beginning. But it's Greek. I mean, this is in the principle, in what is first. Yeah, negative. So of course, beginning is not an error, but it's a limited concept actually to time. To time. Whereas principle is not limited to time, if you think about it. A principle is a beginning of time, but it's also a beginning of space. It's a beginning of movement, beginning of life, and especially beginning of somehow being, or at least existence. Now, what I want to say is that we already agree that the first word of Genesis seemed to suggest something happened before. And actually,
Mm-hmm.
we could point out at a few things, not a many, but a few things in the Bible that really like substantiate that. The fact that a pain, for example, happened before could be proved. Like literally. Okay. But now, if we take Ace, you see our brother Ace, huh? If we take his way of seeing and like the ages, okay,
Mm-hmm.
okay, like very actually very naturally. So let's say we assume that Ace, it's not Ace, but we assume that this way of seeing things is right, okay, and you arrive, you see, at the millennium and all that, and the age of the new heavens and the new earth, okay. You don't need to agree with that, but I just played the game because I have a question to ask you. Let's say you are at the very end of the you see, it's the glorious age of new heavens and new earth, okay?
Mm-hmm.
But it's an age. I mean, it will end somehow. We don't know when. Like Woody Allen would say, "I don't know when eternity will finish, but it will end because it's an age." Okay, but imagine that it's the consummation is finished. Okay,
Mm-hmm.
and now God is all in all. But I want to focus on you. This is my question now. It's hard to ask these questions. Now everything is finished. God is all in all, and therefore He is all in you. I want to focus on you. Okay,
Mm-hmm.
at that point, this is glorious stuff. Okay, God is all in you. Imagine that. Try to imagine that. What is your back pain when God is absolutely all in you? Literally. So if I ask you, let's say God is all in you now, okay? So if I ask you, what's next? For me, if I was asked that question, okay, what's next? God is all in you. You will not play music with the angels forever. This is stupid shit. What's next? God is all in you. The Godhead is absolutely all in you, even physically. What's next? Well, look at the beginning, Genesis 1:1. The answer is right there. You will be somehow the Christ through which God will create an entire universe in your image, and of which you will be the Christ.
I believe
Which,
that's true to the intended reader.
which explains why a pain always happens before the so-called beginning. Now, I would never talk about that publicly, and now this is what I'm doing. I'm talking about that publicly because for me it was more like private faith, you see? Because think about that, like when God is all in all, I mean, this is, I mean, beyond my understanding right now. So I'm just talking for the joy of talking about these things at that point, you see? Because who am I to know what happens when God is all in me? But the most glorious concept I could have right now is that He would create everything through me, a new universe, for which I would be ready to die, by the way. Do you see my point?
Yes.
If I can die for my little frog, now she's a doctor, but I would die for the universe. No?
I think this is why no Christ ever said no.
I think you cannot say no.
I think I mean, who could?
You cannot say no to love, to real love.
So I want to tell you a quick story.
And sorry if I said
No,
something, if I just said something totally crazy myself, I'm sorry. I'm
I don't
just
think so.
sharing foolish divinity.
I don't think it was foolish at all. Um, and I think it's actually the case in smaller ideas of universes, but just the same, still the case. But you mentioned you'd asked me if I'd ever been to like a New Age Christian retreat, and I haven't. But I
Okay.
have been to a traditional one. And we were talking about whether or not Christ could refuse and how God would compel, or at least in my mind, we were going toward how God compels.
Mm.
And those are one and the same story in my experience, actually, because I went to a Christian retreat for they said for new Christians, right? And their idea of a deep expression of the sort of thing that the New Testament was talking about was to have a creche scene.
Oh, just a moment. This is Christian.
Creche, the nativity.
Oh, in crèche. This is a French word. I should know it. Crèche.
Yeah, I'm just saying it wrong. It was, or perhaps to have people in costumes with winged angels,
Okay.
lifted up on some platform so they could be above the regular people. And this was their idea of how to express what the New Testament was talking about. But I encouraged the people in my group to have a jail scene. And everyone wore a rather large paper name tag with words like jailer, prisoner, preacher, cellmate,
Maybe prostitute.
warden. Sorry, there was no prostitute.
Oh, sorry. So if there is no prostitute, I no longer follow you.
Well, I'll just say it for the side chat instead. Then,
No, but sorry because
yes, there is a prostitute, but she's not called prostitute. Actually,
okay. Okay, I'm sorry. Continue.
she's just a cellmate.
I am
She is a
sorry.
prostitute, but she's cellmate.
I am sorry.
It's okay. And, warden,
Okay.
that's one of the labels. Brother, that's one of the labels. Someone visiting.
Okay.
And set up this jail scene. But what the audience doesn't know is that all these name tags are in funny shapes for a very good reason. First of all, you flip them over and they read the translation, the biblical word,
Okay.
the biblical equivalent. So the jail is just being on this earth. The prisoner is every one of us. The cellmates are others of us, sometimes giving each other very, very bad advice. The jailer is actually a demon, and that the warden is the Satan. And the last thing is that when prisoner flips over his name,
Okay.
and it reads believer,
Mm-hmm.
he can take it off of his neck and fold it the opposite way, and it's a key to the jail cell. So I couldn't stay 3.5 days, or I'm sorry, 3 days at this long weekend retreat, because where I'd been led was so much different from where they'd been led that it was almost like speaking two different languages.
Yes, of
But
course.
they were very nice to me.
Oh yeah, but you are not Christian, I guess, or at least you are not like a typical believer.
Yeah.
Are you?
They were very nice, and they asked me back for the reunion, where they wait a few months, and they ask people they called pilgrims who just went through that program a few months ago to come and testify about how their life became significantly better because of interference by God. And I knew that as soon as they proposed the idea that we all get up and take our turn on stage and take the mic and tell this story, that I should go last. I knew that right away. And I was right, or prayer was right. The angels were right. I should have gone last because everyone got up there and talked about clothes washers.
What is that? Sorry, what is that?
A clothes washing machine
Oh,
that they
okay.
just received new.
Okay.
Or a vehicle.
Okay.
I'm not saying they didn't need a vehicle or they didn't need a clothes washer. I'm not saying that. But God didn't drop an envelope full of money from the sky. People gave them money and they bought the things they needed. Well, And I was
But sorry, but
backstage.
the jail thing was just a kind of metaphor.
Yes, of course.
So have you ever like slept in a real jail?
I've done hard time for a total of 5 days on 2 different weekends.
Great.
Released on my released on my own recognizance on both occasions.
That's a real thing.
Yeah, not really. They put me in the nice kid cells.
No, they
But
treated you like a little prince.
they didn't treat me poorly at any time. I wanted more coffee and more food than I could get, but that's okay. It wasn't that bad. Um, so I was backstage and I was practicing in my mind all the beautiful things that had happened in my life, how my attitude had changed, how I was so much happier than I'd ever been before, and happy because reality works. And I had a better grip on reality and my life was just so amazingly easier. And I was rehearsing that in my mind, and the Father spoke to me, and he said, he says, I want you to sing that song. And I already knew which song.
Why?
It's because it's a song I use to pray. It's a song of praise to my mind, and it's a 1970s love song.
19th.
And there's nothing sexual about it. It's just about agape love, about a
Yeah, but
true
in
and
the
pure love.
70s, you never know.
Well, in the 70s, in my taste, what I was listening to, it was about an agape love.
Oh yeah.
But um, if anyone wants to listen to it, it's John Denver, and the name of the song is Annie's Song.
Okay.
And I think the lyrics just work very well as a prayer, and I've prayed it I don't know how many times, but as praise, not as asking for information. And he said, I want you to sing that song. And I said, well, that sounds really embarrassing. And he said, yeah, that'll be embarrassing for you. Um, but but I love you. And I said, well, I love you too. And he says, yes. He says, yes, I know you do. But what you're not thinking about is I love them. And I said, okay, that was pretty true and profound and bigger than I thought you were going to respond to me. Um, and I said, yes, I know you love them. And he says, well, we went back and forth like that about 3 more times. And he said, let me show you. And he showed me. Now, it's not often that
He showed you what, sorry?
I'm I'm going to tell you. It's not often that airborne, air assault, helocasting, combat vet who was on the front lines in Iraq would lay on the floor in fetal position and cry. That doesn't happen very much to me. In fact, once in my life did that happen to me. And it was that night,
You mean all
and
of
it
a
was,
sudden? All of a sudden.
yes, it was that night, and it was backstage. And for 30 seconds, he let me feel his love for you.
Me?
Yes, you. And you, 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 and you. And you
Not
right there in
only
the back.
me. Not only me, huh?
Not only you, but you're included in it.
I'm joking.
I
So
don't think it's different one person to all of us.
so there is no discrimination.
No. But I promise you, I don't care how tough you think that you are, anyone who ever hears this. I don't care how tough you think you are. If you felt the love that God felt for you, it would buckle you. I promise.
Now you will make me cry, so therefore I will ask you a question.
Mm.
I don't know how to formulate my question.
Mm.
Um, Um, what was the nature of that love?
I wish I could feel it to you. That would be great.
You think language is able to talk about that? Maybe. Do you think sacred language is able to talk about these things, like deep language?
My heart swole in my chest until I couldn't breathe. And I fell to my knees. And I was so in rapture with the love, I didn't realize I was crying. And for 30 seconds or thereabout, there was not a thought. I couldn't manage an objection. I couldn't think, what if someone sees me? I couldn't do anything but just feel that. It took my entire mind, it took my entire spirit, it took my entire body, and it consumed me, and I didn't know anything else.
So now maybe you could be able to explain the song of the songs.
No, but I can understand them. But just like I can't put my experience into words, I can't explain this to someone.
Yes and no, it's paradoxical. You cannot, but you know what? I understand that you cannot. So this powerlessness, we share it. So somehow you are able to express it, but it's very hard to explain how it
I mean,
happens.
I
But
can only talk about the symptoms of it. I can't tell you what it felt like,
mhm.
except that it was absolutely consuming.
Because just before you said that, I was about to talk about powerlessness. Powerlessness. This is what happened to me last week. You don't boast about powerlessness.
Mm-hmm.
Something happened to me, the details of which are not even important. But suddenly I was broken. And of course, it was not the first time of my life. My life is the story of a series of broken pieces and broken vessels and broken everything. But that one was was different. It was a more brokenness than brokenness, kind of. It was tough. You see, you think you know pain, and suddenly it's more painful than ever, and you are broken and more broken than ever. And I discovered something that I already knew.
Hmm.
So this is interesting. Now I discovered what I knew, that I was absolutely powerless. I already knew that. A baby knows that. But you see, the taste was deeper than ever. You see, you can be convinced about something, and you know what? After that, you can be even more convinced about it. And I am, honestly, if you ask me, what is your spirituality? I would answer right now, my spirituality is being 100% vulnerable in front of God. I'm
Boy, that's a
totally.
mouthful.
Oh, you think so?
Oh, yes.
It's really my only spirituality. Whether I sit like a Buddha or like a Christian, I sit and I'm vulnerable and I'm powerless, and God is God, and I am what I am, which is a vessel of clay. And it's not just like nice words, huh? You know that. It's the
Oh, I know
real,
that.
like you're really powerless. Because we human beings, when we speak, we have a bizarre tendency. We boast. We sound confident,
Yeah.
and the better we speak, the worse. Because the better we speak, the more we sound boastful. But we are not more powerful when we speak well, and we are not less powerful when we don't speak well. So if this love transformed you, and then you should talk more often about that love.
Mm.
No?
In fact, I think we're going to have to stop the talk for today. We're going to have to pick this up some other time, brother.
For what reason did I say something wrong or something?
Not once have I ever heard you say something that I thought was offensive or wrong or hurt me in any way.
I will ask you one last question. What is your favorite verse
Psalm
from the
139.
someone some
One,
some
one,
not
139.
not seriously?
Seriously.
Will you believe me if I say that my two favorite psalms are 145 and 139?
Sure.
Okay. If you want to stop, I'm willing to stop. But I'm
I
willing
want to
to
do this again sometime with you, though.
anytime. I'm always available.
All right.
Except when I'm teaching, but I mean,
Except when you're not. Yeah.
yeah, but I'm apart from that, I'm quite available.
This time of day is pretty good for me every day. Okay.
Anytime you can, I don't know how to say that in English, recourse to me, or I don't know. I will put my email address in the private chat. So you
I'll
want,
I'll give you a little radar ping, little sonar ping,
what is that?
a sonar ping.
I,
One positive blast that
okay.
reflects back a ping.
I don't know what is that. What is a ping?
Um, Two submarines in the ocean
Okay.
contacting each other on purpose.
Ouais.
One sends active sonar, the
Okay.
other one receives it, the other one sends it back.
Wow, that's a metaphor. So I
Yeah,
should expect an answer or a kind of little sign of life.
there you go. A ping.
The very best to you.
Very best to you. Thank you so much for your time.
Thanks.